In this Blender rookie tutorial, I'm going to show you how to build a Keva plank tower. I'm going to show you just the basics with a really small tower, and once you know the basics, you can pretty much expand on it as much as your computer can handle. Alright, got the startup file loaded. Go ahead and right click on the cube, and I'm going to press N on the keyboard to bring out the side panel. I'm going to go ahead and turn on screencast keys, and I guess I'll make that a little bit bigger so you can see it. There we go. That makes it bigger. I've never actually adjusted the size on that before. I'll go ahead and remove the lamp because we don't need it. I'm going to put this on cycles render, and the camera, I'm going to hide that. First thing I'm going to do is add a plane. Add mesh plane, and I'm going to scale that up really large, 1000 by 1000. And I'm going to go to the physics tab, click on rigid body, and then make that passive. And on the floor surface response, I'm going to set that to 50 because I want a lot of friction, because I don't want anything that's sitting on the floor to be floating around, kind of like it's just moving and wiggling and making a lot of unnecessary movement. Then I'm going to click on collision margin and then set that to 0. Now I'm going to click on the cube. I'm going to set the scale on the y-axis to 10, and then the x-axis to 1, and then the z-axis, I'll make that 4 sounds about right. Now I'm going to show you a little trick to get the Keva plank. You know, let me make this a little bit smaller. I'll bring the z-axis down to 2. Yeah, it looks a little bit better. Alright, I'll show you a little trick about how to get this sitting directly on the floor. First thing you want to do, you want to turn it, well, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and apply a material to it. And the reason why I do that is so whenever I start duplicating it, every object's already got a material applied to it. Click on material, use nodes, and then just name it plank. And it's not important if we actually set up the material, just as long as we give it one, because we can always change it later. Now I'm going to click on the physics tab, go to rigid body, it's on active, change it from convex hull to box. And the reason why I change it to box is because it calculates and simulates quicker than if you put on convex hull, or at least that has been my experience. It also seems to be a little bit more stable on box, especially when it comes to planks. Now if it's in a irregular shape, then you've got to use convex hull or mesh, but when it's square, rectangular shaped, box works best in my opinion. I'm going to turn the excuse me, I'm going to turn the friction up to 10, and then collision margin, check that, and then turn that down to 0. Now I'm going to go ahead and enable deactivation and then start deactivate it, and then I'm going to turn the damping up to 0.1. And what enable deactivation and start deactivation actually does is whenever the simulation starts, the rigid bodies are inactive, and they won't actually become active until they are impacted or hit with another rigid body. And what that actually does, it just makes it more stable initially until you want your tower to be destroyed, if that makes any sense. Alright, with the cube selected, go down here to this button right here. It's got the little magnet. Click that, and then change this to face. Now, whenever I drag go to drag that, it drops it directly onto the surface of the floor or the ground. That way my whole simulation is starting off with it perfectly resting on the ground. Now I'm going to go ahead and uncheck the magnet, turn that off, because I don't need it anymore. Now I'm going to press 1, well actually 3, to go to that side view, and then press 5 to go into perspective view, or orthographic view rather. And the reason why I'm doing that is that way I can get a good look at it from a two-dimensional aspect. Because when it comes to, you know, building these, it's easier to build it, you know, directly on from two-dimensional viewpoints as far as getting stuff aligned. Now I'm going to press 7. That way I'm looking straight down on it. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so I can see more of what I'm doing. And then I'm going to click on Duplicate Linked. And what that does, it just creates another plank, exactly like the one I just made. I'm going to create another one, and I'm going to rotate that one on the Z-axis by 90 degrees. And then I'm going to create another one. See, now I got 4 planks. And I'm just moving these around. And what I'm going to do, see, I got this one lined up. I'm zooming in and panning over. I got this lined up so it lines up with the end of those other planks. Now I'm going to just move it over so it lines up, kind of makes a square end. Now I'm going to move this plank over till it lines up with the end. Now I'm going to scroll down or pan down and then adjust this plank so it matches with the corners. Now they're not actually stacked on top of each other, they're actually taking up the same space in the corner. So I'm going to press 1 on the keyboard, and so you can see that they're actually inside each other on the corners. So what I want to do, I'm going to tilt down just a little bit, and then I'm going to select the one in the back by right clicking, and then I'm going to press shift and then right click on the one in the front. That way I select both of them at the same time. Now I'm going to press 1 again, that way go to front side view, and then I'm going to, this is important, I'm going to zoom in close, that way I can, you know, see the gap that I create. Because as I lift this up, I want to lift this up so it's just ever so slightly above that, as close as possible, but without actually touching. Because if you end up placing these so that they're intersecting each other, so that they're actually merged into each other in any little bit whatsoever, your simulation will go absolutely nuts. And you don't want that to happen. So I can, right now I'm going to press 5 and then zoom out a little bit. That way we're in perspective mode and you can see what it looks like now. Now, I want to create a stack at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and press 5 to go back into orthographic mode. Press 1. And now, since I already have the top 2 selected, I'm going to go ahead and right click on this one, and then right click on this one. And now I have all of them selected. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit, and then duplicate all of them. And then lift the duplicates up. Pan down. Duplicate again. Lift them up. Pan. Whoops. Pan. Well, it's wrong. I messed up because my mouse was down here instead of up here. I'm trying to pan, and it won't work if my mouse isn't in the preview window or viewport window. Go ahead and duplicate again. Now let's zoom out and just see what we got so far. Press 5 to go into perspective mode. You see, we got a little tower here, very small, but let's make it a little bit taller. Press 5, go back into perspective mode, and now I'm going to do a box select. Press B on the keyboard, and then left click, and then drag and select all of your cubes, but be sure not to select the floor also. Just go about halfway down through the bottom set. Now I can zoom in a little bit, that way whenever I go to duplicate and move, I could see the gap. Click duplicate, linked, and then raise that up until there's just barely a gap. And I think that's as tall as I'm going to make this tower for this little test, because this is the basics. If you can, once you learn how to make this part and make it work, you can make it as big as you want, as long as your computer's got enough horsepower to do it. Now, I'm going to add a sphere. The sphere is going to be the projectile that I use to hit that tower. Click Add, Mesh, and then UV Sphere. I'm going to move that sphere about halfway up the tower, and I'm going to make it, let's say 5 by 5 by 5. 5, 5, 5. I'm going to click Smooth, and I'm going to go ahead and give that a material. And it don't matter what it is, I'm just going to leave it there for now. I could change it later. Now I'm going to add some rigid body physics to the sphere. Click on rigid body, change it from convex hull to sphere. Collision margin, set that to 0. And then friction, I'm just going to go up to 1. Now I want to change this, or leave it at active, but click on animated. Now I left something out. I want to go back and fix this, and it's not that big of a deal, and it gives me a chance to actually teach you another thing also. Right click on one of these planks. It's been my experience that whenever dealing with rigid bodies, especially with planks, whenever trying to make a building, if you leave the mass at 1, it's too light. It tends to be unstable. So I'm going to make this about 10. Now the key is, how do I apply that new setting to all of them at the same time? The easiest way is to press B on the key with this one selected. Press B on the keyboard and then left click and then drag around all the planks and make sure that you're not also selecting the floor. Now you have all of them selected. Go over here to the left tab or to the left toolbar, click on physics, and then right here it says copy from active. Let me slide this out so you can see it. It says copy from active. Click on that, and what it done, see, I can click on any of these now and they all show 10. Now I can go back to where I was before I got distracted. I'm going to go ahead and make the mass on this also 10. That should be enough. I need to keyframe the sphere since it's on animated. So I'm going to go ahead and pan my whole scene over and zoom out just a little bit. I'm going to hover, make sure animate is checked, and make sure you're on frame 1. I'm going to hover over that and then press I on the keyboard. That adds a keyframe to the animate for the check mark essentially. Now what I want to do, I'm going to change this to location. I'm going to drag this just somewhere out this way. It's not specific about how much. You've got to use your judgment to an extent. And I'm just going to drag it out that just about that distance. And I'm going to click on the key to keyframe that location. Now I'm going to go to frame 30. And then I'm going to move this sphere right into the middle of the tower. And then I'm going to keyframe that location. And basically what it's doing, at frame 1, the sphere will be at this location. And at frame 30, it's moving at a speed at which it will get to this location by frame 30. But I want the sphere to be able to fall, to interact with these, slow down or change direction whenever it hits the tower. So halfway between frame 1 and frame 30, which is frame 15, I'm going to go to frame 15, and then I'm going to add another keyframe right here. I'm going to uncheck, and then I'm going to press I to add a keyframe. And what that does, whenever it gets to frame 30, whatever velocity has built up to the point of frame 15, that velocity is carried on as if it was being tossed, as if it was being thrown. But at this point, it's free. It's no longer keyframed and animated. It's just flying through the air looking to impact something, and whenever it does, it will deflect, it will bounce off, it will slow down, whatever, depending on how you have your physics set. So let's press, go back to frame 1. I'm going to press 5 to go to perspective mode. And let's press play and see what we have so far. There you go. Simple enough, right? And that right there is pretty much it. Once you get this basic part set up and understand how this works, the rest of it is easy. It's just this first basic part. Now I want to show you how you bake your simulation. Right here, this tab right here, it's your scene tab. You click it, and then you go down here to rigid body cache. Now, for almost every plank building destruction I have ever built, if I leave this on 60, it's not very stable. It's best if you turn it up, in my opinion, up to about 600, depending on how fast you have the sphere going and how fast you have this speed set. But typically, 600 is where it's ideal, in my opinion, as far as trade-off in accuracy and speed of simulation, or the time it takes to do the simulation. But usually 300 is, a pretty good number, and 300 is a fairly round number as far as making it work. And it may not be quite as accurate as 600, but whenever you're dealing with a huge number of planks, of course it is an issue here because we only have, about 34 planks. So it's not that big of a deal with this one. I mean, we could turn it up as high as we want it. But realistically, about 300 is correct, or about where it should be for this. And right now, if we just hit bake, it will go through and bake the entire simulation. Now we have this down here. All the way to the end shows it's baked, and we can play through and, works pretty good. And now, if we save the Blender file, and I'll just go here, go to current project, because that's where I save all my stuff. I'm going to just call it plank Planks Tutorial, and then click Save Blender File. And the reason why I went ahead and saved the Blender file after I baked it is because the bake files, all the information from the bake is saved inside of the blend file. Because see, I can close Blender, and then I can reopen the same file I just saved. And the cache is part of it. If I click play, see the cache pops up. But that's pretty much it. I mean, if you have any questions about how to go about doing this, this should be very simple for pretty much anybody. But if you have any questions, let me know. I hope this was helpful. Later, people.